video, we're going to talk about state management, how to show up in a peak state, and why that matters for sales. Now, in my Art of Fulfillment playlist, I do have a video on this that's about an hour and 20 minutes long that is very, very thorough. But in this video, I'm sort of gonna do the very short, simplified overview of what's in there and explain why it's important for sales. So why do we start with this? First of all, by state, I mean like your level of focus, energy, vibrancy that you're showing up in the world with day to day and moment to moment, right? So if you think of Michael Jordan, Game 7, right? He shows up, he executes, he performs well, he wins, versus when you see a game where athletes, you know, they kind of don't really look like they came to play, they're mentally checked out, they show up, they lose, right? And so I tell my clients that our results in life are gonna be highly, highly correlated to our state. So let's say that the state of an average salesperson, I would say is probably pretty shitty, honestly. I would say is maybe like a 3 or 4. Let's give them like a 3.5. Right? Average salesperson. Let's let the R equal results. 3.5, right? Their results are going to be highly, highly correlated to how they're showing up, the amount of energy they're showing up with, right? And so in sales, I know we talk a lot about certainty and a transfer of certainty, right? So you have to be certain enough for you and the other person, because the person walks in, they're scared, right? They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know if they should buy. They have a lot of apprehension. And so you need to be so certain for yourself and for them to be able to kind of carry them over, you know, over all of their fears and their apprehensions. And so state is a big part of that. State and certainty have a lot in common. If you're showing up at a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, a really peak state, then, you know, that's going to be highly correlated with your certainty. You're going to be coming across very certain. When your state is shitty, your level of certainty is going to be shitty as well. And it's going to show up, and if the prospect's level, if you're a 3.5, the prospect's going to be like a 1.5. Let's say prospect, it's like a 1.5, and nobody buys when they're at a 1.5 on a scale of 1 to 10, their certainty level, right? That's just not happening. They may not need to be a 10. Everybody needs a different level of certainty, but this is not going to happen. And so when you've got a sales force of people at a 3.5 for their state, you know, and every single time they prospect and every single time they have a presentation and everything they do, they're at a 3.5, you can see how this is problematic, right? 3.5 results, whatever that means, right? Correlated. So in this case, low. So as you can imagine, a lot of money is left on the table because salespeople do not know how to manage their state. They do not consistently show up at all times, really ready to perform at a high level. And I think salespeople, we are performers, you know? We are, and I think the highest level salespeople are like elite athletes. You know, they always come to play, they always show up, they always execute, and we want to learn how to do that. We want to put that into systems where anybody can learn to do that. So we start with state. As you can see, most people's salespeople's state is not good. That's an enormous problem, right? So what do we do about that? Again, this is a quick video, but I start with this because it's like, if your state sucks, guys, it's like anything else we talk about, it's almost not gonna matter, right? Because you're not gonna have any energy to execute on these other things. We need energy to do things. When I'm with my clients, I always spend the first 30 days with them learning to manage their state, to show up at a 10, because we need energy to do things. And so this is where we start, and brief overview, how do we do that? First, I look at all the basics with people. So are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you working out? I had them rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of those things. How are you doing? Then I had them start incrementally improving those things. So if you're working out as a 2, you know, and you're going maybe once a week, maybe sometime you could go, you know, maybe twice a week, and maybe that would get you to like a 3.5 or a 4, you know? So you start rating yourself in these things, you start incrementally improving them. Eating, sleeping, working out, they have an enormous impact on your state and how you show up. So you have to do them. Again, this is the abridged version. I'm going really fast. You can watch the whole video, but I want to show you this because this has to be in there. Salespeople, the art of sales state, very, very highly linked. We've got to get this part right, or we're leaving an enormous amount of money on the table. And then for people who have sales teams, you multiply that out by all your people, it's a problem, right? So eating, sleeping, working out. clean home, clean car. So these might sound silly, but keep your home clean, keep your car clean. It does have an impact on how you show up in the world, and how you show up in the world has an impact on how you sell. Again, I go into all these things more. I'm just throwing them out there for you to get you guys thinking. You can go and watch the whole other training. But these things all matter. They all impact our state. Grooming and self-presentation and body language. So how you groom yourself, right? How you put yourself together to show up, it matters. Right now, you sort of want to keep in mind the type of person you're selling to. If you're selling to more kind of common, like middle class, or even maybe lower class economically, right? You might want to dress different than if you're selling like $1 million home. So, excuse me, or you know, a very high ticket something, right? So keep in mind your audience, but be well groomed, present yourself well, look good for whatever the occasion of what type of thing it is that you're selling. Body language. We're gonna go into this in more detail, specific even for sales, but at least for the purposes of state, body language, I mean, you know, carrying yourself in a certain way, you know, big, open, strong body language for the most part, approachable. There's a lot of research that the way we move our body has a lot of impact on the way we think and the way we feel and the way we show up in our state. So this is something we really need to be aware of. Again, I go into more detail in the other training. But we look at all these things. How are you doing with eating, sleeping, working out, clean home, clean car, grooming and self-presentation, body language, rate them all on a scale of 1 to 10. Start incrementally improving all of them. That's gonna massively improve your state. So these are the last kind of little bits of state. Again, I know I'm going over them quickly, but this gives you an idea. State is not contingent on how you feel, right? It does not matter how you feel, you can show up regardless. Your state doesn't need to have anything to do with how you feel. So you show up, you know, you're not feeling good that day, you're a little anxious, you're a little tired, you're a little down. It does not matter, you can still show up. That's what's required, right? Circumstance. State is not contingent on circumstance. So this says feel, it says circumstance. State is not contingent on your circumstance. You know, maybe you haven't been selling a little bit, maybe you got something going on at home, maybe you just got in an argument with somebody, you know, whatever. There's all these circumstances in our life, and if we can only show up when our circumstances are good, that's a problem. And so I have this rule for my people that state is not contingent on circumstance. We have to show up, we have to execute no matter what, right? And then this last little rule or idea I have for them is the idea of mental repetitions. And that's the idea that many times throughout the day, your thoughts are gonna be all over the place, to the past, to the future, you know, dwelling on negative things. And you wanna be able to sort of notice when your thoughts go somewhere else and bring it back. And I call it a mental repetition because it does take some effort. It's like, you sort of bring yourself back. You can feel yourself exerting some energy when you do that. It's a little uncomfortable at first, a little awkward at first, but many times a day, you start to be able to bring yourself back to being grounded in the moment and to where you need to perform. And so these are things that also help you with your state. And so essentially, if you're doing all these things, you're eating, sleeping, working out, clean home, clean car, grooming, self-presentation, body language, incrementally improving all those, understanding your state's not contingent on how you feel, you're showing up anyway. State is not contingent on circumstance, you're showing up anyway. You're doing your mental repetitions, you're bringing yourself back. That's basically the quick summary of everything that I say in the longer version of the video. And so when you do all these things, you take your team of salespeople who are 3.5s and you move them up to 10s. And when you move them up to 10s, then their results are 10s, right? And that's largely because they're showing up with that certainty. And then the prospect has that certainty because they have that certainty, and then that can carry them across and they'll buy, right? So state, extremely important. I start with it because I think it's probably the most important thing to really sell at a high level. All these videos are gonna be in sort of a chronological order, an order that hopefully makes sense of how all this works. So do watch them in order, but this is the first one. So if your state is not a 10, this is what you wanna be thinking about. If you have a sales team and you're wanting to kind of start assessing them based on these trainings that you're watching, you wanna ask yourself, okay, well, what do I think my salespeople, where are they at on a scale of 1 to 10? And then if they're not 10s, which most likely they're not, right? Because most salespeople's state is not good, right? And we're gonna go into this in more detail with other topics, but this is what it will take to fix that, and that can absolutely be fixed within 30 days or less. But I take 3 to 4 weeks with my one-on-one clients to fix this, but could potentially be fixed faster. And then once that's fixed, you know, every single thing that salesperson, all those salespeople show up to every single day at a 3.5 versus a 10, you can imagine enormous difference in sales. So I'm going to erase this and we're going to go on to the next point.